Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing rejection breeds obsession. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing rejection breeds obsession. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need to understand an important fact, and that is rejection breeds obsession. In today's podcast, I'm going to be explaining this fact in 3 parts, including how it connects in trying to get your ex back. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is intensity of emotions. So when faced with rejection, the emotional impact can be profound, leading to heightened feelings of longing and desire for what has been denied. Rejection can create an intense preoccupation with the object of desire. And this is how we can straight away initially connect this to a breakup. So let's just consider the perspective of you, the dumpee. If you're a dumpee, then you felt rejected at the time of a breakup. If you're listening to this and you want to try to get your ex back after being dumped, you will certainly understand the concept of rejection breeding obsession. I would even go as far to say that your feelings towards your ex, the dumper, are now even stronger than when you were in the relationship. Now you might disagree with this and think, look, I always loved my ex, I always wanted to be with them, and it's not true that I feel more for them now than I did back then. But I would politely disagree, and I challenge you to think back to your relationship. Think back to a situation that you found yourself in pre-breakup, moving through the breakup, and now post-breakup. And I believe that your feelings are even stronger now that you've been dumped. And that connects with the concept of rejection breeding obsession. You feel rejected. You feel your ex-dumper is on a higher plane. You feel your ex-dumper made a choice that you had no say in. You feel that your ex-dumper must be better than you, at least in your unconscious mind. You will feel that they are a higher person because they don't want to be with you. And if they don't want to be with you, then they must be a better person than you. And that, in essence, is why a dumpee will feel so much worse after the breakup than maybe they were in the relationship, even though things may not have been going that well. Maybe you even took your ex for granted. Maybe you even felt about dumping them, but they got in there first, they've dumped you, and now you feel 1,000 times worse, and now you feel 1,000 times more attracted to your ex, because there is nothing more attractive than rejection. And this is why the focus can amplify feelings of attachment and make it difficult to move forward. Certainly, if you're trying to consider completely moving on and thinking, well, I want to meet somebody new, I don't want to be with my ex anymore, I just want to forget about them, you're going to find that almost impossible to do. You are not going to be able to move forward in a healthy way when you've been dumped without processing your feelings and going through the steps necessary to experience the whole of grief. And grief comes in waves. Grief isn't a linear process where you go through each of the steps and then you've completed and come out the other side. Grief will come and go in different ways and different aspects. And again, that is what you're going through. That is what the rejection is bringing on in your mindset. And that is why the intensity of emotions is so strong. You miss your ex more than you could ever imagine missing anybody. You feel more love towards them than perhaps, and I believe, you ever did before. Even when you were together, even when you were happy, you actually feel that you love them more now. You actually feel the intensity stronger than before, and that is because of the power of rejection. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about rejection breeds obsession. And point number 2 is how this connects with getting an ex back. So like I said at the beginning of today's podcast, I was going to be connecting the concept of rejecting breeds obsession with trying to get an ex back if you've been dumped. So we've already spoke about the fact that if you're a dumpee, you're experiencing the concept of rejection breeding obsession because you are likely feeling very obsessed towards your ex, especially if you are a stage 1 dumpee. You know, I believe the dumpee stages consist of 3 separate moments within your journey, and a stage 1 dumpee is somebody who is likely thinking of their ex 24/7. They can't even imagine for a split second that they want to be dating anybody new, and they feel if they don't get their ex back in their life, they can never feel fulfilled or happy again. If you're at that point, if you're a stage 1 dumpee, and by the way, it doesn't matter how long ago you were dumped. Being in stage 1 can last days, weeks, months, or years. Everybody is different. But I would say if you resonate with what I've just described, you are a stage 1 dumpee, and that is when you can really feel the rejection breeding obsession. But how can we connect this to trying to get an ex back? Well, you need to be thinking along the lines of what would happen if your ex the dumper felt similar feelings to you right now. So if you're the dumper or your ex is the dumper, then you can reject them as a dumpee. Now again, you might be thinking, well, how can I do this? They've rejected me. They don't want to be with me. How on earth can I reject them? Well, you can reject your dumper by removing yourself from their orbit. You can reject your dumper by not behaving in a way that they expect you to behave. Now, please listen to that clearly. They don't necessarily want you to behave that way consciously, but subconsciously, they expect you to chase them. They expect you to contact them. They expect you to want to remain part of their orbit. Maybe some dumpers will actually ask you to still be friends. They are actively acknowledging they want you to be part of their orbit. But most dumpers probably won't. Most dumpers will, seemingly to you, move on their own path. And that is what consciously they are desiring right now. But subconsciously, they think you as a dumpee are going to keep contacting them and keep reaffirming their value. So if you remove this, if you take yourself out of their orbit, if you never contact them again unless they contact you first, if you listen to the hints, tips and advice I give in my podcasts and also within my one-on-one audio coaching calls, you can create the feeling of rejection in your dumper's mind, even though they ended the relationship. So even though you're the dumpee and they're the dumper, you can reject them without them even reaching out to you and you saying no. I'm not talking about that type of rejection. Of course, if you want to try to get your ex back and your ex dumper reaches out to you, you can't be saying, no, I don't want to speak with you. No, I don't want to potentially see you again, okay? If you want to get them back, then of course, if they reach out to you, you need to have a conversation. You need to see if you can get to a point of meeting again. Else, how on earth can you get back together? Now, I'm speaking about rejecting them in their subconscious, rejecting them by not behaving in a way that they expect you to. Now, if you want support going through your breakup recovery, if you want advice on how to try and get your ex back from your specific, unique point, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your specific, unique situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and my final point of today's podcast about rejection breeds obsession. And point number 3 is negative cycle. So the more you fixate on what you've been rejected from, the more it can reinforce feelings of inadequacy and fuel the obsession, potentially hindering your emotional well-being. And this is so important to recognize. This can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. This can be a negative loop that you feel you can't get out of. Remember what I've said here. The more you fixate on what you've been rejected from, the more it can reinforce feelings of inadequacy and fuel the obsession. So in this instance, in your situation, you would be fixating on your ex. You would be fixating on your dumper. So the more you fixate on your dumper, the more it will reinforce in your mind that you are inadequate. The more you will feel, okay, my ex chose to leave the relationship, and therefore they are better than me, and therefore I am not good enough, and therefore I don't deserve them, And this is where it feeds and fuels into the obsession, going around the loop, going around the negative cycle, and this can potentially hinder your mental well-being. It can certainly cause you emotional distress, and sometimes it can get to a stage where you need to speak with a local doctor, a local counsellor, somebody who can help you through these type of thoughts, because you need to be making sure that you don't fall into a depression. You need to make sure that you recognize what you need to be doing to help yourself, and that is removing the continuous thoughts of your ex. You need to break that cycle. You need to break the obsession, because if you don't, it's becoming a negative cycle, round and round again. Now, the advice I would give is to keep yourself as busy and occupied as possible. You probably won't want to do this. You probably will hear from your friends and will say, hey, do you want to come to the movies today? And you'll be thinking, no, I don't want to go to the movies. I don't want to be seen in public. I feel awful. I think I look awful. I don't believe anybody wants to spend time with me because I'm a mess and I just don't want to see the world. I want to hide away in my house. Okay, that's probably what you're feeling right now, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you try and get your ex back. It's not going to help you try and find somebody even better. But more importantly right now, it's not going to help you through breakup recovery. Because at this moment in time, you need to be thinking of you. You need to be focusing on yourself. It's not selfish. It's not arrogant. It's not being a narcissist. You need to be thinking of number one, and that is you. You need to be looking after yourself, loving yourself, understanding yourself, and then when you move through recovery, this is when you can get to the point of where you can try and reattract your ex and or find somebody even better. I always like to say it's win-win, because even if you don't get your ex back, you can find somebody even better if you go through the self-improvement that I promote. My podcast will help you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. But if you want to speak with me one-on-one, we can really dial down on your specifics. This doesn't have to be generalized like my podcast. If we're speaking one-on-one, we're going to understand your situation and what you can do to improve and increase your chance of success. Success is ultimate happiness. Whether it's with your ex, whether it's with somebody new, ultimately, it doesn't really matter as long as you feel happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment, and excitement and desire for life. You might think you only want your ex back now, but if I could promise you that you would feel these great feelings with somebody else, if you think about it logically, you would probably realize that that is just as good an option. Now, can you get your ex back? Yes, it's certainly possible in most instances, but you can't get your ex back or anybody else into your life if you haven't recovered, if you're not going through breakup recovery. And this is where you need to break that negative cycle, keep yourself busy, speak with your friends, family, maybe you want to talk with myself. You need to be living your life in a way which is actively removing as much possibility as possible of thinking and obsessing about your ex. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.